There are one factual lie after another being presented with a straight face. So let's do 3 of these in this segment. I'm going to start with Ted Lieu talking about how the Trumpsters murdered a police officer.
We're all aware that a violent mob murdered a police officer.
So there it is. He's talking about Officer Brian Sicknick, and he's stating, as something we all know, a fact, that the Trumpsters murdered Sicknick. Except, it is already known now that that is not true. It is already known that Sicknick was not murdered. He was not hit on the head with a fire extinguisher, as had been widely reported. I mean, reported by not just the New York Times, the Washington Post. It was picked up by all kinds of other outlets. National Review was all over it. They murdered a police officer. And this was the narrative that has shaped the hysteria. But it turns out that it's a false narrative because the details of Officer Sicknick have now been coming out. And turns out they've been coming out in kind of a creepy way. It seems like even his family wasn't even properly informed. Officer Sicknick, by the way, did not die on January 6th. He went home on January 6th. He communicated with his brother. In fact, he said he was, quote, fine. Now, he died the next day, apparently the evening of January 7th. And they're trying to figure out what happened to him. Did he inhale some kind of pepper spray that he had an adverse reaction to? Did he have some pre-existing medical condition that acted up that caused his death? This is not known. But what is known is that this was not a deliberate or intentional murder. So this is a flat-out lie, and one has to assume a knowing lie. And the reason Ted Lieu can get away with it is he knows that people like the New York Times will go along with it. Why? Because they were accessories to the lie in the first place. Now, I noticed in a recent New York Times article, they talk about Sicknick in a different light. No, he wasn't murdered. They're trying to figure out the cause of his death. You'd think the New York Times would print a correction, would apologize for its previous misstatements. Nothing of the sort. They act like we never said anything different. Hey, we're just doing reporting here, guys. So this is the era we live in which brazen lies are offered, they're never corrected, and we just march along as if nothing really happened. No accountability whatsoever. I now want to turn to Joaquin Castro, who puts out lie number 2. Listen.
But can you imagine telling your supporters that the only way you could possibly lose is if an American election was rigged and stolen from you?
And you can have the election stolen from you.
And ask yourself whether you've ever seen anyone at any level of government make the same claim about their own election.
And you can have the election stolen from you.
So, you can see the refutation kind of right there in the clip, but that's not the full refutation. I mean, just think of the total atmosphere of 4 years of questioning the legitimacy of Trump's election. I mean, this started before he was even elected. It reached a kind of feverish temperature right after Election Day, and it continued all the way through 2020. A widespread mass denial of Trump's electoral legitimacy from the left on all kinds of fronts. Hillary's statement is only sort of, you may say, the tip of this iceberg. And yet, here's Joaquin Castro with a straight face, as if there's nothing to be explained, nothing to be taken into account, no double standard to be resolved, none of that, with a straight face. Never before in history has anyone. So this is the Democrats of today. It calls for citizens like us to be extremely vigilant because these lies are just flying all around us. And now I take a third example. This involves Eric Swalwell, who, in an attempt to prove that Trump was endorsing violence, talks about a woman that Trump retweeted. The woman's name is Jennifer Lynn Lawrence. She's a California activist. According to Swalwell, she tweeted out that she was, quote, bringing the cavalry. And this is what Swalwell says about that. He goes, We are bringing the cavalry. That was the consistent message. President Trump was inciting something historic. The cavalry was coming. Now, here's the only problem. That's not what Jennifer Lynn Lawrence tweeted. She actually tweeted, we are bringing the Calvary. Calvary. Get it? It's a Christian reference. It refers to the place where Christ was crucified, on Calvary. And what Lawrence, who's a Christian activist, was referring to is her group was organizing a prayer vigil in Washington. This was the Calvary that she was talking about. We are bringing a team of, quote, prayer warriors who are going to get together to pray for a resolution of this matter. So even though Lawrence spoke about Calvary, what Swalwell did, either deliberately or perhaps unintentionally, but it's hard to believe that he would, in an impeachment trial with so much preparation, so many eyes looking on this, that he wouldn't intentionally be switching Calvary. And it's very easy to do. I almost misspoke myself a moment ago, to cavalry. So a statement of peace, of prayer, of an appealing to, you may say, a higher form of justice, is now converted into a false call for violence. A deliberate, perhaps, misinterpretation intended to create a false impression. So you can see now why the Republicans, who they may not be onto all of this, but they're onto enough of it, go, we've had enough. These are brazen liars. They've been lying now for the better part of a week. And why don't we send them with their tail behind their legs back to the house where they belong?